Mr. Begley, members of the board, we have 5 items for board discussion this evening. Our first is our book study, and this is our last book study discussion for the school year. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Begley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Smith. Would anyone like to lead us out? I think I'd start by saying that I was pleasantly surprised to see the last 4 chapters were the most meaningful and impactful to me. I enjoyed reading these. Lots of examples, lots of real-world situations shared. I think one of the things that hit me in chapter 8 was talking about sometimes you don't have a people problem, you have a situation problem, right? And tweaking the environment is important. In fact, it was really what Simone was talking about, right? Within the preschool, you had the triangle table, and so they created an environment that created behavior, right? So just a good example of that. Other thoughts?
Probably to that point, on page 220, it talks about the bad behavior and making things calm, and Mrs. Elder, created and managed a situation to make it, high fives from the parking lot and from the curb, and saying good morning just kind of changed the atmosphere, the tone of the day and of the morning coming in. And it took, as she quotes, bad kids to good kids, and it's little steps, as it talks about. One step is the start of a journey, and it takes those little steps to get going. And in that scenario, like you said, it's life. There are a lot of life applications here in this last section. She put it to work, and she installed it, and it worked, and it changed the whole culture of that school.
I think it's great. This is a business book, right? So there's lots of business examples and private sector, but there was a school example that I thought was very meaningful for the board to see, and that her changes really started outside the building, right? In the parking lot.
Yep.
Really changing that tone, setting the tone, right? Very interesting.
I did think of Mr. Hustle on chapter 11 when she's talking about monkeys riding a skateboard.
Just immediately came to mind.
It just popped right in there. But change isn't, on page 253, it says, change isn't an event, it's a process. And then down at the bottom, it talks about the Eiffel Tower and how it was built, and people did not like it. Actually, she says they hated it. And then just as they evolved and kept talking about it, presenting about it, had exposure to it, it changed the whole idea of what they perceived that Eiffel Tower to be, and they end up loving it. So.
Other thoughts?
You didn't let me go first, so everybody took mine.
Uh-oh. Oh, we did it again to you?
Actually, on page 233, I thought was very interesting about the designated driver, how that came about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That was an interesting story.
It just tells you how your mind works sometimes. You don't think about something, but you see it, and it kind of sticks with you. You know, they put on chairs just a sign in the bar, L.A. Law, who's the boss, had a few seconds in there on it. And it's directing the rider by describing a simple action that could help complete a problem. And he was motivating the elephant by shrinking the change.
Yeah, created a social norm. That's pretty amazing.
That's all I got.
I enjoyed the example. I'm a very much an example person, so I learned by examples mostly. That's my style. But where the example about getting students to come to class on time, and how the teacher tweaked the environment by buying a used couch and putting it in the front of the classroom so that the 2 biggest late offenders would figure out eventually that was the cool place to sit, and then they were getting to class early so they could have that seat. They were voluntarily sitting in the front of the classroom and getting there early so they could have that spot. So I thought that was interesting. And on page 240, where they were talking about how can you stop John's BlackBerry addiction? And I'm like, okay, we're a little bit past BlackBerries now, but I mean, you know, who doesn't have problems with their phone sometimes? And
John's a mess now.
you know, it got me thinking because, you know, I recently gave up Facebook like, for Lent. And, that was my thing, and I can only like spend like 10 minutes on Sunday on it right now. And I could see it the first few days. I'd get that little red bubble that said, you've got 27 notifications. I'm like, I don't know that I know 27 people, so how do I have 27 notifications? And it would irritate me, like, I want to see what's going on. So I ended up hiding the app, so I can't see that bubble at all anymore. And I was thinking, when I read this, like, ooh, that's kind of the same thing. So that really, really spoke to me, and honestly, I kind of don't miss it right now. So maybe I'll keep it up after that.
Anyone else? Just a quick quote, change isn't an event, it's a process, and isn't that the truth, right? You don't just say, this is what we're doing. You have to get there through a process.
That's on page 259 where it's got that sort of snapshot there, how to make the switch, and it talks about that. For things to change, somebody somewhere has to start acting differently. Maybe it's you, maybe it's your team. Picture that person or people, and then it gives the three directives: direct the rider, motivate the elephant, and shape the path. But like you said, it's got to start. Somebody's got to take the initiative.
Also on page 222, people fear checklists because they see them as dehumanizing. I make a checklist every time I leave to go out of town. That way I don't forget nothing. Now, if I could get my wife to do it, I wouldn't be buying stuff in Myrtle Beach that we have at home.
It's a process, it's a process.
Maybe you could do a book study with her.
That's an idea.
I'll show
probably
her
have
that,
some
I'll show her
extras.
that tomorrow on
Yeah.
TV,
Maybe at Myrtle Beach.
on the golf course.
I'll share a couple quick ones on 183. Brian, you talked about tweaking the environment. It says it's about making the right behaviors a little bit easier and the wrong behaviors a little bit harder. It's that simple. And I think sometimes it just comes down to talking to people and just asking, like, hey, how can we make this easier? I think sometimes we just look past the simple part of it, right? And then the other thing I'll share, we often talk about getting a little bit better each day, and it's chapter 11, Keep the Switch Going. It talks about the journey starts with a single step, and it talks about an individual, a lady who's starts to, use that positive reinforcement with their husband, and then he just eats it up, and so he, basking in that appreciation, begins to change. And it just talks about the need to notice and reinforce your colleagues' positive behaviors, just as she did with her husband, and trust that your colleague will do the same. It's the secret to getting past the first step of your long journey and on to the second, third, and 100th step. So I think sometimes we just are looking so far out, right? If we could just, again, back to that keeping it simple, one step at a time, get a little better each day, positive reinforcement along the way. So I appreciated that.
Absolutely. Anything else? Okay, we'll move on. Thank you. It was a good one. It was a good finish.
All right, our next item for discussion, staffing needs for the 25-26 school year. Mrs. Skirvin and Mr. Hustle.
Wow, it's my first time behind the microphone. It's very exciting. Mr. Begley, members of the board, thank you for giving me the opportunity to discuss with you our students with disabilities. Each year, we continue to see growth in the number of students who qualify for special education services. In fact, the updated number came out this morning, and we're at 1,702 students with disabilities in the district. Our department remains committed to supporting student success by providing appropriate learning environments and employing highly qualified staff. In response to this growth, we initially anticipated the need to add 3 new intervention specialist positions and 6 additional educational assistants to support the 3 new multiple disabilities/autism units at West Elementary. However, with careful consideration of the district's financial resources, Amy, we explored alternative staffing solutions. A review of current intervention specialist caseloads and building needs identified 2 existing teaching positions within our districts that can be reallocated to West Elementary. Additionally, 6 educational assistants have been identified for reallocation to West Elementary. As a result, the original projected need for 9 new positions has been reduced to just 1 new teaching position. Furthermore, Mrs. Hauer is currently reviewing student numbers, class sizes across the district with the goal of reassigning at least 1 more position before the start of the next school year, potentially resulting in no net increase in teaching positions. Through strategic restructuring and reallocation of positions, we continue to prioritize fiscal responsibility while ensuring that we meet the needs of every student in our district. Let me know if you have any questions.
Mrs. Skirvin, just to clarify,
Yes.
the new units, we are required, that is a mandate because of
That
the
is a
number of,
mandate.
correct?
Yes, we are
Yes.
mandated by law to have these specialized units for students that qualify. And they have very specific limits on how many students are allowed to be in said units. So for students with multiple disabilities, we're allowed a maximum of 8 students. And if it's a social communication or autism unit, they're only allowed to have 6. And we have to have a certain amount of EAs, we have to have an intervention specialist. So every year, we go through this process, especially with preschoolers. So this is year 3, we've been really tracking the numbers. This year, we have 32 preschoolers coming out and going into kindergarten that will require a specialized unit. And we do vet that, so I don't know if you want me to go into the process that we go through, but we do, there's a lengthy process to be able to be in one of those units.
Well, I want to thank you and Mr. Hustle and whoever else was involved with strategic restructuring, right, and finding a way to lessen the number of new hires we need to make in our current financial situation that has a huge impact, and still provide the services necessary to our incoming students.
Yeah, Ms. Gervin and Mr. Hustle, just ditto that. Thank you for making the right choices, and the financial part of it's important when you're seeking this, but we got to do what we do for ratio purposes, but being good stewards of what we have. Thank you both.
I agree. Thank you for being physically responsible with the funds and running those numbers based off of mandates that we have to do versus what we can do. So thank you so much for being mindful of that and making magic happen.
We try every day.
Thank you.
All right, our next item for discussion, revised administrative salary ranges. Mr. Hustle.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Earlier this week, I sent an email to the board regarding the revised administrative salary ranges to simply include the newly created assistant treasurer job description. So just wanted to see if there were any questions for me before you were asked to approve this item tonight.
No.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Up next, proposed master contract with the Fairfield Classroom Teachers Association. In addition to that, after that, it will be board policies, both covered by Mrs. Hauer, so I'll turn it over to her at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Begley and members of the board, I am very happy to discuss with you tonight the proposed master contract, which was ratified on March 27th with our Fairfield Classroom Teachers Association. I won't bore you with all of the details of the contract. I know you've had a chance to read through those already, but I will just highlight a few of the agreement items. We're looking at a 3% raise each year of the contract, which is consistent with the average increase across Butler County schools as we're seeing right now. The duration of the contract is a 2-year contract. We're unable to certify the 3rd year due to our current finances as we look forward. And another highlight, the extracurricular index will be computed on a slightly higher base salary, as that has not been increased since 2013 for our extracurricular compensation. Another thing that we're excited about, we're adding quarterly meetings with FCTA to discuss curriculum initiatives and increase the collaboration between the teachers and administrators in the curriculum department. We have a very good system in place, and we're very collaborative already, but this is just going to be another opportunity to have more voices heard so that we can hear more perspectives and make sure that we're making the best decisions that we possibly can. And then the last highlight I will share is in regards to the school calendar. Beginning in the 26-27 school year, we will be adding an additional in-service day for teachers to address the increased professional development needs that we see coming down the pike as we make our way through the next couple of years. Publicly, I would like to take just a moment and thank the administrators and the FCTA members who were part of our negotiations teams. Kurt Etter, who wished he could be here tonight, he's coaching our boys volleyball team tonight, so not able to be here, or else he would. Sean Thompson, the OEA rep, and our teachers, Kim Snyder, Kelly Dish, Ann Stokes, Annie McKinney, Michael Meinier, and our administrators, Ryan Bellamy, Jen Skirvin, Mandy Ogg, Jason Hustle, Amy Lee, and our legal counsel, John Clemens. This group, while as we work together as a team, may not have always agreed on everything as we went through the process, both sides bargained in good faith and allowed for the process to just be very collaborative and respectful, and because of that, successful. So we're just very proud of the work that went into this contract on behalf of the administration and the teaching staff, ultimately for the benefit of the students that we are fortunate enough to get to serve each and every day. And they're the reason that we all show up to work every day, just to make sure that we're meeting their needs. And it was just nice for the group to be able to come together in what could have been a very contentious meetings. They were not. They were collaborative and respectful. So pending any questions or comments from the board, you will be asked tonight to approve a new FCTA master contract that will go into effect June 30th, 2025 through June 29th, 2027. Any questions or comments?
I'd just like to say I've talked to several teachers since this was settled, and not one of them complained. They were all very happy with what they got. I think you did a great job.
Thank you, I appreciate
I'm
that.
glad Bill went to Ross.
I believe it's a very fair contract for both sides, so.
Thank you.
You know, I'll sort of echo that too. A great job. I wish I could rename every name that you just mentioned, but both sides coming together in a respectful, collaborative effort to a solution. 2 years versus 3, but that also highlights that we're in a financial situation, and both sides recognizes that.
Correct.
And that's helpful for the community to understand and know, and the admin, the teachers on that side, and admin on this side, and how we work together. Again, it's for the students. That's what this is all about, and everybody benefited. So thank you all very, very much.
Ready for policies? Okay, so my other item for discussion is board policies. I have 7 pieces of policy for discussion and action this evening. The language is in your board packet, but it matches what I sent to you earlier this week for your review. Letter A, policy JEFB, release time for religious instruction. We already have this policy in place, but House Bill 8 allows us to revise it to add language saying that we can require background checks for an instructor or volunteer of release time programs. Letter B, policy KBA, public's right to know. Due to House Bill 265, the main revision to this policy modifies the process an individual submitting a public records request can file a complaint. So it's no change in our current process in regards to responding to public records requests in a timely manner. It's just a change to the process should someone feel as though we're not doing that, which we work very hard. Amy works very hard, Angie Neal works very hard to ensure that we do meet those deadlines. But upon receipt of a filed complaint, the district now has 3 business days to address or resolve the alleged failure before seeking any other legal remedies. Letter C, policy EDE, computer online services, acceptable use and internet safety. You may remember us discussing changes to this policy due to Senate Bill 29 earlier this school year. We were at the board meeting at West Elementary, if that helps you visualize it a little bit better. But at that meeting, I said stay tuned for changes because the Senate bill as written it was not specific enough, creating some very lofty and unrealistic expectations. So now, House Bill 432 brings those promised changes that we were hopeful would come. So the provisions impact educational records contracts with technology providers and monitoring of student devices. The changes significantly reduce district notification requirements and narrow the definition of terms, including the entities that are considered technology providers, in a way that will reduce the impact on our district contracts. All good things. Also, advance notice is no longer required to monitor student devices when it's limited to a non-commercial educational purpose. That was something we were battling with, like how do we notify parents when we're monitoring a student device if we're always looking at what our kids are doing, because a lot of their education's happening on the computer. So these changes make that better for us to be able to more effectively support and educate our students. Letter D, policy BCE, board committees, and letter E, policy BD, school board meetings. Revisions to both of these policies are due to House Bill 257. They reflect changes to authorization of public bodies, school boards, to meet virtually. School boards whose members are either elected or receive compensation for their services are not permitted to hold virtual meetings. However, school board committee meetings may be held virtually if the board members participating are not elected or compensated to participate in the committee meetings. So board meetings cannot be done virtually. Committee meetings can, as long as you're not elected or paid to be a part of them. And letter F, policy JGE, student expulsion. House Bill 206 allows us to revise this policy, authorizing us to expel a student for an initial period of 180 school days for actions determined to pose imminent or severe endangerment to the health and safety of other students or school employees. Additionally, if a student has not shown sufficient rehabilitation by the end of the 180 days, the superintendent may now extend the expulsion an additional period of up to 90 school days. After reassessment and following established procedures, the student may then be reinstated, or the expulsion can be extended again if rehabilitation has not occurred, or we don't believe that it's occurred. So there is no limit on the number of times an expulsion can be extended in accordance with these procedures. Not something that we hope to have to do very often, but the option is now there should we see the imminent threat that would require it. And then letter G, policy JHCD, administering medicines to students. Revisions to these policies, this policy is due to House Bill 70 and House Bill 206. So House Bill 70 requires us to now identify 2 classes of drugs, prescription and over-the-counter, along with some updated language on administering each class of drug to students. We are not changing our current practices with this, but it is just more defined in the policy now. And then House Bill 206 pertains to students with seizure disorders and now allows a student with a seizure disorder to possess seizure medication at school if certain conditions are met. That was a lot. That's why I gave it to you in advance, so you could take a look at it. But pending any questions or comments that you have in regard to these policies, you will be asked to take action to approve them this evening, as the laws requiring these changes went into effect yesterday. So it's good timing for a meeting today, so we can make sure our policies are up to date.
Any questions related to those?
I just want to thank you. That was a lot, and you gave us a breakdown in like less than 10 minutes. And I'm sure it took you probably like 5,000 times that time to actually go through all of that. So thank you so much for going through all that work and making sure that we are adapted into what is legally required of us. So thank you so much for all your work and your team.
Of course, thank you. And that concludes my items for board discussion this evening.
Thank you.